is your understanding of why we developed MyDMR?
Now, the real purpose of MyDMR is for the chronic care manager, correct? To work to both log in the time and the information every time that somebody talks to this patient.
Exactly.
The real point of this is for chronic care management. So for chronic care management, because this is the low-hanging fruit, and it really will change primary care to have the funding of this, but also the ability to keep patients out of the hospital. So I'm a real believer in chronic care management. It's this money that's gone into it can change primary care, or gives us the money to have staff. But it's got to be a tight coordination between the staff that's doing this and the doctor who's making the decisions. And so the information you have on chronic care management doesn't necessarily have to be all the physician notes by any means, but the information there that somehow that is updated both between the clinical visits the patient has to the doctor's office and the plan that was developed at that session and that monthly phone call to interpret how the patient's doing and to send a note somehow, but it really is critical, they say something like swelling. Has the swelling improved? I see the doctor said, call us if your swelling doesn't improve. It does get this money, but the key is it captures the physician's heart, because this is information that they know that the patient's doing okay and there's not anything being missed. Because this is such a valuable part of the future of good primary care and building the efficiencies into this kind of process. This is a world that is very important for everybody in primary care.
Do you feel that it's of value to keep track of a patient's encounter history and make it available to the PCP?
You will melt a physician's heart if they see information they want is those 3 or 4 quick statements that they summarized in that care plan for that visit. And everywhere we train, we have to show them that their staff can put that information in for them very accurately and completely, and it's efficient. It's not time consuming. That sort of individual thinking that is not just an EMR add-in, but that's what, even when you get a 20-page document from the ER of seeing a patient, every physician will find those 3 or 4 sentences, because that tells them what the physician was actually thinking.
That's exactly what I would use and really learn to depend upon. It's not just use it, but once it's good enough and it's easily accessed and it's updated in a very competent fashion, like a chronic care manager has to be in this new world. I would become dependent upon this kind of other observation, other input. With home health, home care, we've been doing for the last 15 years, we'd get a 4-page report from a nurse we didn't know, never seen our patient before, and sending us a ton of stuff to try to figure out what's relevant and what's not. This is the way home health would really work.
What is your experience with onboarding a segment of patients of a particular panel?
We work with a system in the Midwest, and they hired a whole staff of chronic care managers to work with the patient panel. They had 15 internists who brought in an aging population with them. They put them under one roof, and then they hired the chronic care managers to work these panels. And that was a difficult, slow process. Now, I think the internists didn't do their part. So to have a physician that's engaged and wants it and sees the value to the patient is the top reason. This is a tedious process pulling the patients in.
My DMR is able to pre-qualify patients in the overall patient panel who have 2 or more chronic conditions, then present that list to the chronic care manager to ease the onboarding process.
For the nurse who runs this, that's a huge value.
The same method that pre-qualifies the CCM segment of the patient panel also pre-populates the multi-tabbed care plan you see here.
Stop there for a second, right there to action plan. I mean, I could see your delegate or your chronic care manager, if this was the doctor's action plan, and really one of the monsters of primary care is that patient with 10 chronic diseases that shows up every 6 months, and that because of lack of access, that patient's going to take an hour to try to, and they won't be able to cut too many corners because they can't get the patient back soon either. But if you have a chronic care manager calling that patient every month and having the action plan of the doctor here about what are the sugars and what is the weight and what is exercise level and so forth, and that they've sort of been able to stay on top of this patient, and then when that patient comes in, based upon following that doctor's care plan that they developed at the last visit, then all of a sudden that monstrous situation is reduced efficiently and competently to something that's manageable. The action plan is, where I just have a knee-jerk reaction. This is where the doctor's plan should be put, and whether it's copied and pasted and then updated at each one of those monthly phone calls. That'd be huge value for that PCP. That's the kind of stuff that starts reducing these chronic care patients, chronic disease patients, into something that's manageable.
The nature of the action plan tab is dynamic, so the nurse can itemize different aspects of care that need attention.
That's that chronic care manager, and they're in charge of these 50 people who are eligible. So when the doctor puts in their plan, they can access the EHR and then transcribe this in some kind of a way that's not hard. I mean, to break down the doctor's plan into what's meaningful and put this on the CCD can all be done at home. But that's not part of their time, their login time, right or wrong?
It would be, typically.
When they're taking the doctor's care plan and transferring it to the CCD, that's going to take 10 or 15 minutes easily, probably.
Well, it's a clinical activity.
Right. Okay. And then you'd have your basis of discussion with the patient to initiate the calls and to see how the patient's doing. And if it's coming from their team, from their local PCP, they love getting those calls. It's personal. The beauty of this is that you can have a nurse work this document, but you don't have to provide space for that nurse. Information from the EHR, and if they've got access, it's done by the local team, so they should have EHR access at home. They could take the doctor's plan and break it down to these kind of action steps, and then that becomes part of the discussion at every monthly call, whether it's the COPD and breathing and how much they're using their medications or what their sugars are running. So it allows a person to work part-time but not have to have space in the office, and really start mitigating this huge problem in primary care when that chronic disease patient comes in infrequently.
The billing reports are electronically generated and stored as a paperless solution.
I absolutely would benefit, having this kind of report that nobody has to sign and do by hand. And you're free from an audit, or you got all the information to back up an audit. You're not losing time. It's just easy when you start talking to the patient, make sure you put in the right information to DMR. And I think it looks really nice. Fully automatic, quick solution is critical to make this also work. Right information, and you get paid for it in an easy manner. I don't know how you could improve this. This looks really good. Y'all got an excellent product here, and it's got a real need.